Hey, namaste, beautiful people. Here we are. Welcome. Today is the 1st of June. Look at that. New month. 1st of June here in New Zealand. It's 9 a.m. Wednesday morning. Chat with Matt time. How can we serve you? I just quickly opened up and saw that no one's written anything ahead of time, so I am free to answer anything that arrives as we progress through this 30 minutes of chit chat. New moon. New moon was how long ago now? Was it 2 days ago? It was, yes, 2.5 days ago, sort of. So we're sort of starting to move out of the influence of the new moon. I hope it went well for you. It's, in my opinion, it was a lot of, I don't even like this word, but it did feel like a bit of a conclusion. Did feel like a little bit of conclusory type energy. A lot of loose ends were getting wrapped up. And they weren't particularly the comfortable bits. The dregs, if you like, of some of the shit that I've been dealing with for decades, probably. And I'm not saying that it's finished, of course. Hey, Sister Erina. I'm not saying that it's finished, of course, but it did feel like there was a lot of conclusion going on, especially in the few days leading up to the new moon. And I am relatively optimistic. I could even use the word hopeful. I try not to use the word hopeful because it sounds a little bit disempowered quite often, that you're looking for, situations external to yourself to change. You're hoping that it changes and therefore life will get better. Hey, Sister Sheena. But I am reasonably optimistic that moving into this new lunar cycle, that it will be a little bit more comfortable. Not necessarily less intense, but I do believe it won't be as, for me personally, I'm choosing that it's not going to be as triggering and as, triggering or all the, not as emotionally intense as the last lunar cycle. But I still do believe there's going to be a lot of SH1T going down in the external world around us. I just don't believe it's going to feel as personal. Potentially, but let's see. Trying to predict the future is pretty crazy. Anyway, so I put a little poster on in the notification that said, new moon blessing, breathe out and relax, let go of what is dying. Choose to be free in authentic presence. Choose to find your freedom in the authentic presence of this now moment, right? As you relax into acceptance and let go of what is falling away, what is in the process of disintegration. Breathe in and expand. Embrace what is birthing. Choose to be inspired into empowered action. And that's where I think we are now, allowing ourselves to find a little bit of inspiration around what we can step forward into, some form of activity that's going to feel in alignment with what we have been hoping to achieve, quote unquote, hoping to achieve. Now I think we need to work a little bit more intentionally towards helping it to manifest, right? To helping this outcome to be here. Hey, a lot of people have come on and I've missed most of you. Michelle, Zena, Audra, Erina, we got. Good morning, my friends. Welcome. Whatever part of the world you're in, obviously it's not morning for a lot of you, but there we go. So it's this difficult balance of, hey, Sister Susie, it's this difficult balance of choosing to be aligned with what we are stepping forward towards, and also at the same time maintaining allowance for what is still being stirred up to release, right? And getting out of this linear mentality, this reductionist thought pattern that I need to finish with all this releasing so that I can begin something new. No, we're going to have to begin new things while the old is still processing and releasing. So this is the difficulty, and a lot of it is around these oversimplifications that we have mentally sort of been trained into, thinking things in a linear way, that I need to do A, then B, then C, and it has to go in order. The universe is not like that, right? We're a very multi-dimensional experience here. So be in allowance for you to consciously choose to begin new things and to step into new things, not with a great deal of desperation that you have to, that this is the time, and if you don't, you're going to be a failure, but really open your heart and open your mind, your perspective, to what you could step forward into that feels purposeful without having to put purpose on a big pedestal. I think we talked about that last week. Okay, I always get mixed up whether I've talked on Chat with Matt or my other live stream that I do in my subscription group, which is called Drops of Light, and they both blend for me. So anyway, let's I'm going to scroll up here. Actually, I'm going to do a refresh on this page, and then I'll just read Zena's question and then Jill's question. My house saga exploded today. Oh God. Anyway, I'll start with Zena. Morning, Matt. Having to listen on my way to work. Good energy start to the day that has residual unpleasant energy from yesterday. Awesome. Definitely holding space for you, Zena, that you can choose to maintain that sort of that conscious alignment with the good energy that's there today without having to make it bad or wrong, that if you quote unquote lose it and you do find yourself back more deeply in the experience of what you are releasing, what you're purifying, what you're not finding so comfortable. And at the same time, allow it to be okay that the energies have been reasonably unpleasant of late. Certainly through the weekend, they were reasonably intense yet again, just for a change. Anyway, Jill said, my house saga exploded today. I told the Cornwall house I was withdrawing yesterday as they made no progress with a chain. Then today I get a call that they are suddenly ready to proceed by the end of July, but only if I will stump up with an extra 15,000. They were waiting for me to withdraw just so they could garza me on the price. Feeling very betrayed and dishonored. Maybe a message for me there. Trust is hard to maintain now. Yeah, don't trust anyone, Jill. Gazump. Yeah, okay. Gazumped on the price. Yeah, it's important not to trust any external being, person, entity, structure. This is not the time for trusting any structures and persons in some form of authority. And contractual agreements included, right? A lot of this is falling apart right now. Hey, Brother Lou. A lot of this is falling apart right now. So trust, what you have to trust in is yourself and your capacity to deal with things. So, just if you're going to withdraw. And if they want to come back to you and say we can complete at the end of the month for the same price, then fine. If 15 grand, then tell them to stick it, right? Because you'll move on. This is trust what you know in your heart, and be willing to follow through with it. And don't allow yourself to fall into games, because everyone's going to be trying to manipulate all sorts of things at the moment. Not everyone. There's a lot of manipulation going on out there. It's very, very common to find manipulation coming up in our field in various ways. The point is not to get angry or feel betrayed about people or beings or entities or the state, etc., trying to manipulate us, because this attempt to manipulate us is our process of achieving our freedom, right? Is our process of reinstating our sovereign divine will as a sovereign being here on the planet. So that's the point. There's going to be a lot of trickery. There's going to be a lot of skullduggery. There's going to be a lot of desperation tactics being employed in all sorts of ways, and it's only going to get more intense as things start to unravel further and further with various, financial crises / structures falling away, So our job is to be mindful that all of that is happening. Hey, Sister Phil. All of that's going to be happening, and our job is to stay present to it, stay aware of it, but not get enmeshed in it. We have to deal with it. We can't remove ourselves completely because we're still working within this system, but we just operate at a higher octave or octave. We operate at a higher frequency so that we don't get so emotionally upset by all of this BS that's going down, and we just do our best to navigate it, maintaining our integrity and achieving the best outcomes for ourselves, not getting mentally boxed in thinking, no, I'm not going to do that because they're manipulating me. Don't fight, don't cut off your nose to spite your face. Work within the system to achieve the best result as it feels appropriate to you now in these moments. And of course, that will continue to evolve as time progresses, what feels appropriate, and be willing to change your mind and to change your stance and to change, your perspective on things and how you're choosing to operate. Don't get caught up into honoring your word in these situations. No one's honoring their word. Honoring the word, is yesterday's energy. What you need to do now is honor your heart and trust that what you're feeling to do from your heart is the appropriate thing to do. And don't get caught up in making promises that you may not want to keep into the future. That's beneficial. Jill said, boy, I told them exactly how to go forth and multiply. Yeah. Perfect. So, onwards, right? Cleared that out of the way, so that's good to get that. Hey, Glow, how are you? Kansas City, Missouri. No promises. Yeah, you don't promise things. It was put on such a high pedestal not so very long ago, right? That these promises were very important to as a measure of our integrity. If you said you were going to do something, then you better do it, no matter what has changed circumstantially since you promised, right? So that was a measure of how honorable you were, which was a very, very high virtue. And this is great to instill this mentality in people who you could get to promise to do all sorts of things for you before they knew the full story. So you could get them to promise to, be in your army and to fight for you before they really knew what your full intentions of using your army were, right? So many of us promised to defend our land and be in our army, and then found ourselves, at the request of our king being aggressive and doing unspeakable things. But because we had pledged our allegiance to the king and the army, etc., and this is just an example, by the way, then we couldn't break that for otherwise we would be dishonorable, right? And that would be bad. That would be a sign of our weakness. That would not be a good spiritual thing to do. And so many of us have been trapped into doing all sorts of things. Now, the same sort of thing can happen in business today, where people get contracted into supply agreements and whatnot with various other entities, and then realize that it's not really serving them or serving the greater good, that continues, but they're now contracted, and law is now keeping them involved in a promise that they made in the past to keep supplying something that may be used in an exploitive way, or may be used in a way, or they may have been tricked or not given all of the information, etc., right? All of these ways of manipulating and using this contract, promise, honor of your word against people, right? There's a long history of that, and it's time for us to really let go of that and expand out of that. And the way to do it is to start to at least dissolve this idea that honoring your word is very high integrity, and bring your honor back to your heart, and choosing what to do choosing to do what feels appropriate in the now moment, as opposed to choosing to do what you promised to do from some moment in the past before you had all of the information that you have today. So yes, and Laura, I believe that companies there's going to be sort of this intensification of companies fucking each other over, sorry my French, with these contracts, as it intensifies to basically explode and implode, and for business to sort of be reinvented, or at least the contracts and the way that we use contracts in business to be reinvented as we move forward into a much more collaborative business model moving forward, and we leave this sort of competitive dog-eat-dog model behind us, right? The shadow masculine falling away so that the divine feminine can be more influential in all things in our society, including how we do business and how we formulate contracts and how we hold people to account based on these contracts, etc. No one's going to feel happy about holding someone to a promise that no longer serves them, right? Because it wouldn't feel good to us to keep taking services from someone who is not giving those services happily anymore. So a contract that holds someone ransom to a promise that they made in the past is not going to feel good. And that is going to carry more weight than the financial advantage in maintaining said agreements that we used to do in the past, right? Where we would basically screw people down and get them to promise to that price. And then as the market changed, they had nowhere to go. And companies basically, would be running at next to no profit or at a loss or whatever, or, based on a promise that they'd made and then, couldn't change the contract, etc. That's just not going to happen in the future, because it just doesn't make sense to do that when we operate more from our heart and less from our head, Choked on my water. Good work, Matt. I think I missed another thing from Jill. Jill said, I've been asking my heart what I should do now, but the answers are so muddling, and then I stay awake all night, falling into worry. Yeah. Okay. So there's a lot of that going on, Jill. There's a lot of lack of clarity at the moment. And so it's important, it's beneficial for us, as making things important just adds another layer of stress. It's beneficial, I feel, right now to give ourselves space and not to know exactly what we're going to do. To trust that when you ask your heart, that you don't need to get a direct intellectual answer, but that you can trust your heart is going to give you the nudges at the time, right? So what to do now? I'm going to trust my heart and I'm going to feel the nudges as they arrive. Now I have to be patient for that to happen, and I also have to stay aware and I have to stay relaxed so that I feel these intuitive nudges as I move forward. Of course, your mind wants to know the answers so that you can rest and sleep and think, oh, it's all in order. I know what to do now. But again, I believe as a society, as a collective, we're moving out of that frame of doing the world where we have this delusion that we know what to do now, right? That we understand, right? This delusion that I understand and I know what to do now is becoming more and more apparent that it has always been delusional, and we can no longer find comfort in being deluded in thinking that we know what's happening, we understand, and we know what to do, and therefore we can predict the future, and therefore we don't need to worry because we think it's all going to go the way we want to go. I think the game now is to accept that we don't know what's going to happen in the future and that we don't need to worry about it. Right? That's the difficult bit, right? To accept that we don't know how the future is going to unfold. We don't understand what's going on, not fully anyway, or not even close to fully. And we don't actually know what to do next right now. I don't know what I'm going to do next. And now, after accepting that I don't understand, I don't know what to do next, and it's more complicated than I can possibly understand, how can I choose to relax and not worry about that? How can I choose to trust my heart is going to guide me in the moment when there are actions to take? So Jill said, I'm being pushed to go and exchange of contracts to sell my house, which is a legally binding contract, ASAP, with completion and moving, etc. at the end of September. God only knows what world will be like by end of September. I don't know what will be like by the end of the week. Exactly. And we did exactly the same as well. We, signed our house away, having no idea of where we're going to go and what's going to unfold, and it's still in the process of unraveling. This is a time to trust that if you feel it's appropriate to sell your house and you feel complete with where you've been living and you know it's time for something new, then be brave, in my opinion. Like, I'm not here to give you strong advice on how to live your life in that way, right, and how to do the logistics. You need to feel into your heart. But I would encourage you not to cling to the old just because you don't know what the new is going to bring yet, because the way that we allow the new to come in more fully is to make space for it. And the way that we make space for it is letting go of the old. So a lot of the time we have to let go of what we have been finding our security in, so that we can allow these new forms of security, these new opportunities to arrive into our life. That's a scary thing to do, because in the middle of that, you're in the void, right? You're in this no man's land. You feel like you are, empty, vulnerable, etc., etc. We do the same thing with relationships, right? We have to let go of an old relationship before we can have a new relationship. Some people try and swap, straight from one into the other. It's always a very messy way of doing it, and quite often doesn't go so well, because it doesn't leave space for people to process what they have let go of, right? To allow sort of a degree of completion, conclusion, wind up to occur in a relationship, so that they can be more fresh and available for a new relationship to come in and to establish itself from first principles. A lot of the allure to sort of going from one relationship straight into the other is the distraction of not needing to grieve what has fallen apart, not needing to process what has fallen apart, not needing to find that deeper clarity in oneself, right? So a lot of people are scared of doing that, so they want to go from one to the next. It's the same with houses, it's the same with cars, it's the same with jobs. Very few people are willing to quit their job and to trust that they'll find a new job. They want to find a new job before they quit their old job, right? Because it's scary to be without a job, right? And society, of course, makes that very wrong, to be without a job. And of course, a lot of people are under financial pressure that they don't have, time to be jobless, unfortunately, and just be in that space where they can really open themselves up to what's next, unencumbered by all of the stress of what is not working so well for them right now. So that's the problem, right? There's all of this stress about what's not working so well now, and that is clouding the field, the energetic field, your mental field, and making it harder for you to be drawn into what's really going to serve moving forward. So sometimes, as scary as it is, it's good to finalize what is releasing and go, well, that's done now. I don't need to worry about that. That's going to happen. I'm out on this date. Come hell or high water, I'm going somewhere, whether it is into the caravan or to somewhere else or whatever. With that level of completion on one side of the equation, you quite often find that there's more expansion to fall into, being led down into what is actually going to serve you moving forward. You were definitely nudged to tell the Cornwall guy to F off. Yeah, great. So that can go away, and that's no longer a lesson you need to keep dancing with, and a what's the right word? An inflammation, right? No longer a triggering aspect to your situation, right? Because now he's out of the picture, you don't need to worry. And so you can look at what other else you have available and what else might come up. September is still reasonable distance away. It's not like you have to be out in 4 weeks' time. You've got all of June, all of July, all of August, and whenever it was in September, end of September. So that, you've got 4 months there. That's should be good. So, in my opinion, of course, and there's absolutely no guarantees. This is the point, but there's never is any guarantees. A meteorite could slam into the earth tomorrow and finish us all anyway, right? Or something else. This is the point. It's to let go of trying to avoid something bad happening, because we can't. We're much better off, in my opinion, putting our focus on stepping forward into something good happening rather than trying to avoid something bad happening, right? That is always going to lead us in a much more expansive journey of growth and transformation, when we can be proactive rather than reactive and defensive, And at the same time, I'm not encouraging people to be quote unquote reckless. We have to find this balance here between allowing ourselves to be brave and courageous and confident in ourselves and our heart, and to really follow those subtle nudges into doing what feels appropriate without getting caught up in all of the fear-based, defensiveness, but at the same time not being completely reckless and just, racking up a huge debt on the credit card, etc., thinking, oh, well, I'm faithful that money's just going to flow in, while you're actually not progressing towards that, right? This achieving this abundance and this expansiveness in our heart is rather like walking the razor's edge, but we don't have to do it mentally. God, that friggin' exposure on my phone annoys me when it keeps flicking from normal to overexposed. Anywho's, be good to be able to lock it, but of course you can't do any of that sort of carry on a live stream Facebook. Michelle wrote, I had an insight this morning. When things are tough for me, I ask God, the universe, the angels for help. But really, how can they really help me in my life here? Also, you are talking about not knowing what's coming this week, next year, but listening to your heart. How can your heart really speak to this? Because if I listen to my mind, it could lead me into trouble. Really speak to this, because if I listen to my mind, it could really lead me into trouble. So what really can we do? What really can we depend on? I think it comes down to, Michelle, this concept of depend on, because we're depending on something to avoid what we don't want and to achieve what we do want. When we can get out of the mentality of trying to avoid and achieve these concepts, and we can just depend on life giving us the opportunity to keep expanding into a more full expression of ourselves, right? To give us the opportunities to really be in this experience. Now, I honestly agree with you that I don't think God, the universe, and the angels really know what's going to happen next week either, because it's still all in the process of being unraveled. So when you ask them for help, you're asking them to help you relax into acceptance of this now moment, to let go of your pain, to let go of your contraction, to let go of your stress, so that as you relax, you can flow more joyfully with life in this moment. Life is to be lived right now. It's not in the future when you achieve the right thing in the past or avoid the bad thing. Sorry, achieve the right thing in the future or avoid a bad thing in the future, right? A lot of us are trying to do this well with our mind, or with our heart for that matter. We're trying to do it with our heart to avoid bad things happening and achieve good things happening. And the whole problem is we have this judgment around what's right and what's wrong, what's good and what's bad, based on mental belief systems that aren't actually valid, because we can't really see the big picture. We can't really see how a perceived bad outcome could actually be our biggest blessing in leading us into the most expansive life we could live. We can't see that from our perspective here, through our lenses, through our perception. But the more expansive version of yourself can. God can see that. And rather than thinking that they're planning it all and leading it all, it's all happening, in my opinion, it's all happening on the fly. It's nothing is predestined in such a way that this is going to happen and you just need to follow the breadcrumbs and then it'll happen. But if you don't follow the breadcrumbs, you'll go wrong and you'll miss your opportunity that was laid out before you by God. No, I think it's all unfolding in the moment. It's all unfolding as opportunities present, and our job is to relax into being open to that, to relaxing into following the subtle nudges in the moment, right, rather than trying to preempt, prejudge, predict what's going to happen in the future and make our moves to achieve the best outcome based on what we think in our mind is the best outcome, what we quote unquote want to achieve or want to avoid, based on what we believe is pain and suffering and what we believe is success and, good outcomes, favorable outcomes. Right, that was Michelle. So Jill wrote, I'm not clinging to the old. I'm defo ready to leave this house, but equally I don't want to be homeless either. Financially strapped for the next 4 months. So existing, not living. Why would you be financially strapped if you've sold your house, Jill? I would imagine you would have a chunk of cash in the bank if you're in that situation. Anyway, conflicting emotions. I've explored heaps of interim options like renting etc. But doors slammed everywhere I looked. I feel my feet are in the running starting blocks, but the release is broken. Yeah. Yeah. I don't think, my personal opinion is you're not going to sort this out ahead of time. If you're ready to go, then you just have to trust, and then you have to let it unfold, and you have to be, and I'm cautioning, don't turn around and say, well, Matt, you said it was going to be okay, and therefore I've sold it, and now I'm homeless. You have to trust that if you're homeless, that's going to be okay as well. It's completely up to you, of course. If you think it's prudent to stay where you are, then do it by all means. But if you're waiting to get all of your ducks in a row and everything to fall into place before you start the process, I think you're going to be waiting for a long time, unfortunately. I think in today's energies, we don't get to see the whole staircase before we start climbing the stairs. We have to be willing. Yeah, exactly. You won't get your money till September, but you'll have your house till then anyway. So I don't see what changes, but anyway, maybe that doesn't really matter. So the point is, none of us are really getting the full picture before we leap. We have to be willing to take action based on today, not knowing all of the details of what's going to have to fall into place to move into tomorrow. That's it. So this, and what we've been talking about with Jill is pretty much the status quo for all of us working in the world today. This is what we're dealing with in terms of jobs and relationships and all sorts of things, health challenges. We none of us are privy to how this is going to unfold. None of us can be quote unquote sure that we know what's going to happen, and to try and do the world in that mode or mentality that you should know how this is going to unfold, and you should be able to plan everything out and get everything aligned before you pull the trigger and start down the path. I think is quite restrictive and is going to basically lead to a lot of discomfort as things don't go the way, even after you went to nth degree to try and plan it all out. We are moving into an age where it is very much more present driven and far less future orientated, right? Letting go of the plans. We also have to let go of a lot of our history. We have to let go of how things have historically happened, because that's holding us back a lot too. Up until now-ish, a lot of us have been looking at the past to gain recognition of the patterns and then applying that to the future. That's not going to work. So we have to let go of that. It has worked, right? We have been using that and just basically upgrading our understanding of the past to keep moving into the future with small incremental steps of progression. But I think in this era, we're in a very big quantum shift in how the world is going to operate energetically and thus experientially as well. And so we have to let go of allowing our history to keep influencing how we expect our future to unfold, and really create more space for us to allow the future to unfold in more magical, expansive and exciting ways, irrespective of how we think it should go based on our education and our expectations based on past programming. We have to let go of our past programming. We have to be willing to hold space open for things to occur that were once considered miraculous, but won't be considered miraculous for much longer, because we will all start doing what was once considered miracles in forms of how things fall into place and manifest. But it's going to happen on the fly. It's not going to happen ahead of time, and you're not going to be given the guidance to do this and do this and do this, and then it will happen, and then it'll be easy, right? You're going to have to step one step at a time. No plans will be given out ahead of time, generally. So your job, our job, is to work through this process of not knowing without contracting into worry, without contracting into the stress of not knowing. This is the difficulty. This is why it's going to require mastery of us to take courageous steps forward without having all of the details in place, and then not to worry, because as soon as we start worrying, we contract with the stress of that, and that cuts us off from receiving the next step, and then we get stuck in the quagmire of oh fuck, I don't know how this is going to turn out, I've made a mistake. As soon as you start thinking I've made a mistake, I don't know how this is going to work out, then you're going to dig yourself into that situation. If you can stay buoyant, if you can stay optimistic, go, wow, this is going to be interesting, I'm curious to see how this is going to work now, because it's not going the way I thought it might, right? But I'm choosing not to worry about that because I have faith and I trust in life, in God, in the universe, that things will miraculously fall into place as long as I keep vibrating in resonance with the outcome that I'm choosing. Then we have a good chance of moving our way through it. But it still requires us to step up to the plate. It still requires us to move through our discomfort. It still requires us to take various risks and to stretch ourselves in moments to try things and to all the rest of it. Awesome. Oh, I think I understand now, Jill. So Jill said, I can't pay my bills for the next 4 months. That's the stress. I want to move and need to move, or mortgage company will take the house. Exchange contracts now will keep the wolf from the door. Maybe I'm meant to be homeless, but doesn't feel right for me yet. I will ask for some miracles. Surprise me. So you're looking to sell it quicker than that, are you, Jill? Is that what you are looking for, rather than completing in September? Maybe. Anyway, hope my heart muscles are strong enough to cope with it. You would be amazed at how resilient your biology is, and you'd be amazed at how resilient your emotional state of being is, and how resilient you are as a being, Jill. It is going to be testing for all of us to relax out of stressing, worrying about what we can't see, how it's going to work out. We're all being tested in this way right now. Many of us, I've received so many emails just the other day of people, having difficult circumstances in the intensity of what was happening on the weekend, etc. It's up. It's all coming up for us, generally, for every one of us right now. So just be an allowance that it's not a comfortable time to be alive right now, and that's not you failing. And this is an awesome opportunity for us to step forward. Jess said, I'm going to read it here. I feel that you may have given guidance on this indirectly, but I've heard in spiritual circles about a huge influx of light that, quote unquote, could arrive in July that may shock many people energetically. Do you sense that is coming, kind of like a crux point? Yeah, I don't know if it's going to come necessarily in July in some defined event, influx of light. I think the light has been steadily, and when I mean steadily, erratically, consistently though, up-leveling over the last several years and several decades for that matter. I'm not ruling out the idea, Jess, that large influxes of light do hit us all of a sudden, and that it does instigate big unravelings, disclosures, breakthroughs, breakdowns, etc., etc. But I'm certainly not privy myself to any prediction in any sort of reliable form that is going to happen, and it's going to happen in July. So I don't really get caught up in those predictions of what's going to happen too far out in the future, and even July is out in the future for me, because get through the next 4 weeks before we get there. Sheena was basically giving Jill some stuff here too about, various options for part-time jobs, etc. Carers in terms of not having to be a full-on carer. Awesome. But yeah, so I don't like the idea of a crux point mentality, that there's going to be one defining point, one defining thing, one defining person. President Trump's going to say, et cetera, right? I have nothing against Trump and all that whole thing. But, that sort of savior mentality, that it's going to happen in one event. People tend to pin their hopes on one event. One thing is going to do. Oh, this conjunction, this astrological event, this election event, this influx of light. Oh, we're moving through this part of the, whatever it might be. I tend to think the process is going to be ongoing, with various spikes in amongst it all. But I think, we've already had several crux points, and we'll have several more. But I don't think they're ever the big one that solves a majority of problems or really changes things dramatically. Things are changing dramatically all of the time, but never as dramatically as we think it might be. Like 2012, whatever it was, 2112, 21st of December 2012, it was supposed to be, and, we all got excited, and then it came and it went, and it was kind of like, oh, was that it? That was a bit disappointing, right? But we can see that there's a progression occurring, and it's not, just don't put your hopes on any one particular event happening and that's going to fix everything. I think the time to act is right now, always, or as good a time to act is right now, and not to put it off to the future thinking things are going to get better in the future or things are going to get harder in the future, or, be prepared for whatever might show up, and then also be prepared to take action into what opportunity is available right now. Yeah, housing market around the world is going to slow. The whole economy is, in a rather interesting phase right now. So it is easy to want to just hunker down, but some of us are choosing to be brave, and just follow our hearts into what feels appropriate, even though it's difficult to be, in a process of transformation flux when things are looking so unsteady. But I don't think things are going to get more comfortable for quite some time, in terms of steadiness and, structural stability. I don't think we're going to have structural stability for quite some time. I think we're all going to be invited to find that level of stability in our own heart, not in the external structures. And that's our lessons right now. And so we're all learning to work within this unstable world, and that's requiring a lot of our effort, if you like, in finding a relaxed attitude with the instability that in many ways I think is only going to get more intense over the next few years. So I know a lot of people are hanging out for the new Earth to just sort of fucking arrive, and then it's all easy and look that. But I don't think it's going to happen that way. I think it's going to be, much more of a progression through some difficulties and slow evolutions. And of course there'll be enclaves of new Earth, as already is happening. People living in a much more collaborative way, in a much more heart-based, aligned way. But societal wide, it's going to take quite some time for the majority to start experiencing life in this way. And so those of us who may be finding enclaves of this will also have to exist alongside of and be influenced by the old shit show still, falling apart and putting on all sorts of desperation measures of control and authoritarian might and right. So yeah, it's definitely going to be an interesting time on this planet. And worrying about it is going to help one iota. So relax, my friends, and enjoy this moment for all that it was offering you. Anyway, just for a change, I've gone 15 minutes over. that's only 50% over. Much, much love. I will speak to you again next week. Bye for now. Keep smiling. Stay relaxed. Use your practices. Breathe. Get out in nature. Do what you need to. Take good care of yourself. Remember that you're loved and supported. If you need some help, reach out. Bye for now.